We tend to think, and that's very natural for everyone, that the world we see around us, the world of buildings, trees, streets, the moon in the night sky, we think that the world as it is in itself is the world as we see it. In other words, we think that perception is a transparent window into the world that allows us to see the world out there as it actually is, in and of itself. We think that we are driving a car with a transparent windshield, so we see things as they are. Now, we know scientifically that this cannot possibly be the case. If we saw the world as it actually is, what it would mean is that our internal cognitive states would have to be mirrors of the states of the world out there. Now, because there is no upper bound to the complexity and variety of states of the world out there, it's not under our control, if we were to mirror the world's states in our internal cognitive states, there would be no upper bound to the complexity and variety of our inner states. Now, what that would mean for us is that our internal entropy would also have no upper bound. And if there is no upper bound to our internal entropy, we would not be able to maintain our structural and dynamical integrity. To put it very simply, we would melt into hot soup if we were to see the world as it actually is, with no upper bound in the variety of states that we would have to mirror inside ourselves. Now, we are still alive, although we perceive the world around us all the time. So perception is clearly not a mirror of the world. It is an encoded representation of the world. What we perceive conveys accurate and important information about the world, but it isn't the world as it is in itself. To bring this into an analogy, if you are an airplane pilot and you're flying at night during a storm, you cannot see the world through the transparent windshield of the airplane. So pilots fly by instruments instead. They look at their dashboard of dials and instruments, and they rely on that to fly safely. Now, those instruments are connected to the airplane's sensors, which make measurements on parameters of the world out there: wind speed, air pressure, temperature, air humidity, and so on and so forth. And the results of those measurements are presented in an encoded form on the dials of the dashboard. The dashboard conveys true, important information about the world. So true and so important that the pilot can fly safely only by looking at the dashboard. We call it to fly by instruments. But the dashboard is not the world. The dashboard is an encoded representation of what is relevant about the world. Now, our perception is a dashboard. It's a dashboard that evolution has constructed over billions of years, and it provides us with actionable, accurate, but encoded information about what's relevant regarding the world. But it is not the world itself, just as the airplane's dashboard is not the sky outside. The mistake we make when we think that the world as it is the world as represented on the screen of perception is the same mistake that one would make if one were to say that the airplane's dashboard is the world. Of course it is not the world. Does it mean that we can ignore the dashboard? Of course not. If the pilot ignores the dashboard, he will crash the plane. If we ignore perception, we will walk under a train. But perception isn't the world, for the same reason that the dashboard isn't the world. There is another line of argument to show that what we perceive, although accurate and important, isn't the world as it is. It is an encoded representation thereof. And this second line of argument has to do with evolution by natural selection. one can prove mathematically, and this has been done, by the way, that if perception were to mirror the world as it is, we would be driven to extinction very swiftly. We have used game theory, which is an aspect of mathematics, to prove that this is indeed the case. Now, why? What is the intuition behind it? Evolution favors fitness, survival, not truth. Evolution doesn't care if we see the world as it actually is. It cares only that we see the world in a way that allows us to survive and reproduce most efficiently. And to understand why it is not efficient for us to mirror the world as it actually is, think of a computer desktop metaphor. This is an analogy by Professor Donald Hoffman from the University of California at Irvine. If you consider a file in your computer at home, I don't know, a letter that you've written, that file is represented on the desktop of your computer as a little rectangle, maybe a white rectangle. If you double click it, it opens up and shows your letter. Now, is that white rectangle the computer file as it actually is? Of course not. A computer file is a collection of millions of microscopic electronic switches open or closed in the flash memory inside your computer. It looks absolutely nothing like a white rectangle. There is no similarity whatsoever. But if we were to see every file on our computer for what they actually are, each one of them a collection of millions of electronic switches open or closed, the computer would be utterly unusable. We wouldn't begin to know what is what or how to work with it. So the operating system of the computer, instead of showing us the files as they actually are, they show an encoded representation, which allows us to work much more easily with the files in the computer. And evolution would have done the same with us. The evolution wouldn't have equipped us with the perceptual and cognitive apparatus to see the world as it actually is, because this would overwhelm us with information, and it wouldn't be conducive to reacting timely to environmental challenges. Evolution would equip us with a dashboard metaphor, like the computer operating system, where we see things as little representations, as little white rectangles, as opposed to how things really, really are. So this very basic intuition we share can be mathematically demonstrated to be wrong. What we see around us, the colors, the forms, the scents, the sounds, the flavors, this is not the world out there as it actually is. It is an encoded representation thereof on our internal dashboard of dials. The world as it actually is isn't what we call physical or material. Physicality or materiality is the name we give to what is on the dashboard. It's what is displayed on the instrument panel of the airplane. It is not what is outside the airplane. It's not the sky outside. Which of course immediately raises the question, if it's not physical, if it's not material, what is the world as it actually is? What is this context, this existence that we seem to inhabit? What is it if it's not physical?